State of Cannabis.
This is the State of Cannabis News Digest, a roundup of this week's key developments in the cannabis industry. Our top stories.
In this week's U.S. Cannabis News Roundup, Texas lawmakers push to ban hemp-derived THC, while Governor Abbott signals regulation instead. Michigan shuts down Viridis Labs after years of inflated THC testing and prepares for a state-run lab. New York dispensary owners sue regulators over a measuring error that may force closures. Minnesota awards its first $1 million in equity grants, while Massachusetts faces both regulator turmoil and repeal efforts. Meanwhile, Oklahoma voters consider legalization. Ohio suffers a medical cannabis privacy breach. Virginia debates retail sales. And Washington faces its fifth straight year of market decline. Stay tuned for the full story.
And now here is the deeper look at the key events in the cannabis world this week.
Texas lawmakers are once again battling over hemp. On August 18th, the state Senate voted to approve Senate Bill 6, which would ban all hemp-derived THC products. The bill, backed by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and sponsored by Senator Charles Perry, would outlaw anything beyond CBD and CBG, making possession punishable by fines and jail time. Perry argued the products pose health risks and hurt productivity, while industry advocates say the ban ignores public opinion and would devastate the state's $10 billion hemp economy, which employs 50,000 people. Governor Abbott has made clear he favors regulation, not prohibition. He has proposed setting a minimum purchase age, limiting potency, and banning synthetic cannabinoids. Abbott vetoed a similar bill in June, saying hemp is a lawful crop that should not be criminalized. The House now takes up Senate Bill 6, and the timing could be critical. If passed too close to adjournment, lawmakers may lose the power to override another veto. Meanwhile, Texas's medical cannabis program has seen modest expansion, with new qualifying conditions and more dispensary licenses on the way. The fight over hemp is more than a policy debate. It's about the future of Texas's cannabis economy, public health, and consumer access. The next steps will decide whether the state doubles down on prohibition or embraces regulation.
Massachusetts' cannabis market, one of the largest on the East Coast, is under pressure from two directions. A state audit released this August by Auditor Diana DiZoglio found systemic failures at the Cannabis Control Commission, including uncollected license fees, inconsistent enforcement, and possible favoritism in host community agreements. Leadership turmoil has further undermined confidence in the regulator. At the same time, repeal is back on the table. Two proposed ballot initiatives filed this summer would eliminate recreational cannabis sales and the state's excise tax, dismantling the adult use system less than a decade after legalization. One version even proposes THC potency caps for medical cannabis. To qualify for the 2026 ballot, organizers must clear major signature hurdles, and polling suggests repeal would face strong resistance. Still, the dual developments have left Massachusetts cannabis businesses, patients, and consumers in a state of uncertainty. For some, reforming the regulator could stabilize the market. For others, repeal threatens to erase years of progress. Either way, the coming year will shape the future of cannabis in the Commonwealth. And before we move on, a quick word about the Harvest Cup, New England's premier cannabis competition and expo. Taking place this year in Worcester, Massachusetts, the Harvest Cup brings together growers, producers, dispensaries, and innovators from across the region. Submissions for this year's competition open September 5th through the 14th, with categories ranging from flower and concentrates to edibles, beverages, and topicals. Winners will be revealed at the expo, alongside hundreds of vendors, live podcasts, and more. To enter your products or learn more, visit theharvestcup.org. That's theharvestcup.org.
Oklahoma's cannabis debate is heating up again. Voters will soon weigh in on State Question 837, which would legalize recreational marijuana, but law enforcement is sounding the alarm. The Oklahoma Association of Chiefs of Police and the Bureau of Narcotics say legalization would worsen problems that already exist, citing that between March 20th, 24 and March 20th, 25, the state's growers produced over 87 million pounds of cannabis, but only 1.6 million pounds were sold through licensed dispensaries. Officials say the rest is feeding a black market tied to international cartels. They're also worried about youth use. Since medical marijuana was legalized in 2018, Oklahoma has jumped from 43rd to 3rd in the nation for marijuana use among young people, and officials say legalization will only push those numbers higher. Supporters of legalization argue that regulating recreational sales would undermine the illicit market and bring in tax revenue. But law enforcement leaders insist the state must first fix the problems in its current system. The decision now rests with Oklahoma voters, who must choose whether to expand legalization or keep cannabis limited to medical use.
In Michigan, on August 20th, the state's Cannabis Regulatory Agency announced a settlement that shuts down Viridis Laboratories, which was once responsible for testing up to 70% of Michigan's cannabis products. Regulators revoked the company's Lansing licenses immediately and ordered its Bay City site closed by September 28th of this year. Viridis's majority owners, who are all former state police scientists, were permanently banned from the industry after years of allegations that they inflated THC potency results and allowed contaminated products to pass. The controversy peaked in 2021 with a massive $292 million recall of cannabis products, later narrowed by a judge but still damaging to consumer confidence. The Michigan CRA says Viridis's practices destabilized the market and forced other labs to either compromise standards or fold. For example, PSI Labs, known for its accuracy, closed in 2024 under that pressure. To restore integrity, Michigan is building a state-run cannabis testing lab, slated to open in spring of 2026, that will set new benchmarks for scientific oversight. For consumers and patients, the closure underscores the importance of reliable testing in ensuring safety and accurate labeling. For businesses, it marks the end of a dominant player, but also the start of a regulatory reset aimed at leveling the playing field and strengthening Michigan's cannabis industry.
A major privacy crisis has hit Ohio's medical cannabis sector. Cybersecurity researchers discovered that a database belonging to an Ohio marijuana card certification service, containing nearly 1 million records, was left unprotected online. The 323-gigabyte trove included driver's license images, social security numbers, medical evaluations, and mental health records, spanning patients in Ohio, Arkansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Virginia, and West Virginia. Access to the files was shut down within 24 hours of disclosure, but questions remain. How long were the records exposed? Who might have accessed them? And why was such sensitive information unencrypted and unprotected? The company has not yet acknowledged the incident. Meanwhile, attorneys are investigating potential lawsuits, and privacy advocates are urging affected patients to take steps such as credit freezes, fraud alerts, and monitoring health accounts. This breach raises broader questions about data security in the cannabis industry, where businesses must navigate both state regulations and federal prohibition. As medical cannabis grows and telehealth expands, failures like this could lead to stricter oversight and tougher compliance requirements.
In New York, dozens of dispensary owners have filed a lawsuit against state regulators after learning their shops may be too close to schools because of a state measuring error. For years, officials measured the 500-foot buffer from school entrances instead of property lines, allowing over 150 dispensaries to open in technically non-compliant locations. The lawsuit argues that businesses followed state guidance and invested millions, only to face closure or relocation. Prominent dispensaries, including dispensaries in busy areas like Manhattan, are among those affected. Regulators have apologized and offered $250,000 relocation grants, but shop owners say that this sum barely covers costs. Lawmakers have introduced a bill to grandfather in the impacted shops, and some have suggested reducing the buffer zone to match liquor store rules. But with the legislature out until January, no immediate fix is on the horizon. For now, more than 450 licensed dispensaries operate under a cloud of uncertainty, raising concerns about jobs, investment, and whether customers may turn back to the illicit market.
Love cannabis? Whether you're into the culture, the products, or just staying informed, statecannabis.org has something for you. Browse your state's latest cannabis laws, find local dispensaries, check out CBD and hemp info, and connect with what's happening near you. Just go to statecannabis.org, click on your state, and dive in.
Minnesota is reinvesting cannabis tax dollars back into communities most harmed by prohibition. On August 21st, the Office of Cannabis Management announced nearly $1 million in Can Renew grants to 11 organizations across the state. The grants are the first under Minnesota's 2023 legalization law and are designed to support programs in youth development, economic empowerment, housing stability, violence prevention, and public health. Recipients include nonprofits in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and other cities, with projects ranging from financial literacy training and job skills development to housing support for people with disabilities and cultural enrichment programs. OCM's Social Equity Director said the effort shows equity is about more than licensing. It's about providing lasting resources for communities impacted by discriminatory enforcement. With more than 150 applications requesting $22 million, demand far exceeded the $1 million available this year. But funding is set to grow by fiscal year 2027, when $10 million is planned to be distributed annually. The Can Renew program complements other initiatives like Can Grow and Can Startup that support cannabis businesses. Together, they aim to ensure legalization benefits both entrepreneurs and communities.
Washington's cannabis market is in its fifth year of decline, raising concerns for the future of one of the nation's first legal cannabis programs. First quarter of 2025 sales totaled just $277 million, down nearly $100 million from the 2021 peak. Regulators say oversupply has driven prices down, making it difficult for producers and retailers to stay profitable. A state audit revealed that in 2023, Washington businesses produced 2 to 3 times more cannabis than was sold, underscoring the imbalance between supply and demand. Worse, regulators lacked accurate data to monitor and correct the problem, and lawmakers have now required the Liquor and Cannabis Board to submit a reform plan by December. Despite these challenges, Washington is moving forward with its largest retail expansion in over a decade, offering 52 new equity licenses designed to help entrepreneurs from communities disproportionately impacted by cannabis prohibition. The combination of lower prices, regulatory reforms, and new licensing opportunities means Washington's cannabis industry is at a crossroads, one that could either stabilize the market or deepen its struggles.
Virginia's cannabis future remains uncertain, but planning continues. This week, the state's bipartisan commission on cannabis sales held its second meeting, exploring how to structure a retail market that could begin in 26th. Lawmakers heard from fiscal experts, equity advocates, and small business owners. The commission reviewed tax models from other states and revenue projections that could bring Virginia up to $250 million annually. During the meeting, equity advocates reminded lawmakers that legalization was rooted in addressing racial disparities in enforcement, urging investment in communities most harmed by prohibition. Small businesses warned against rules that would let large corporations dominate the market. But politics loom large. Governor Glenn Youngkin has vetoed cannabis retail bills, citing public safety concerns. His likely successors are split. Democrat Abigail Spanberger says she would sign legalization into law, while Republican Winsome Earl Sears opposes it. For now, Virginians can legally possess cannabis, but have no legal way to purchase it. The Commission will keep meeting through 2028 to craft a retail framework, leaving the final decision to voters and the next administration.
Want to stay ahead of the smoke in America's evolving cannabis landscape? Subscribe to State of Cannabis, Weekly News Digest, your trusted source for fact-checked, nonpartisan cannabis reporting. Each week, we bring you the latest on federal reforms, state laws, industry shifts, and public health developments, all in one digestible episode. Whether you're a policymaker, patient, advocate, or entrepreneur, we've got the information you need to stay informed. Hit follow, give us a like or a thumbs up. Drop a review or leave a comment. Share this episode with someone who cares about cannabis reform. Because in this industry, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival.
In a ruling that could reshape the intersection of cannabis policy and gun rights, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals sided this week with Florida medical marijuana patients who challenged a federal ban on firearm ownership. At issue is whether Section 922G3, which bars unlawful drug users from possessing guns, can apply to patients in state legal cannabis programs. Judge Elizabeth Branch, writing for the panel, said the government failed to prove that medical marijuana patients are comparable to felons or otherwise too dangerous to be armed. The decision leans heavily on the Supreme Court's 2022 Bruin ruling, which requires gun laws to be consistent with the nation's historical traditions. The case began under former Agriculture Commissioner Nikki Fried and has several plaintiffs, including a retired police officer. Their lawyer praised the decision as a validation of patients' constitutional rights. Meanwhile, the Justice Department continues to defend the ban and has asked the Supreme Court to settle the matter. With conflicting appeals, court decisions emerging, the issue appears headed toward the nation's highest court. For medical cannabis patients, the ruling represents hope, but also uncertainty about their ability to exercise Second Amendment rights while complying with state law.
As cannabis legalization spreads across the United States, federal officials are focusing on road safety. On August 21st, Jonathan Morrison, President Trump's nominee to head the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, told a Senate committee that he will double down on efforts to combat marijuana-impaired driving. Morrison acknowledged that, unlike alcohol, which has a clear national standard, cannabis impairment lacks an agreed benchmark. That gap complicates law enforcement and puts drivers at risk. One senator pressed for a national standard, arguing it would save lives. NHTSA has experimented with creative ads, like a Christmas tree-shaped cannabis bud urging people to find a sober ride, or a horror movie spoof where a driver refuses to start the car because he's high. Morrison said such campaigns will expand, aiming to shift perceptions about cannabis and driving. He also highlighted technology, pointing to a requirement in the bipartisan infrastructure law for impaired driving detection sensors in new vehicles. However, THC impairment is harder to measure than alcohol, since cannabis lingers in the body even after impairment subsides. Congress has shown interest too. The latest House Transportation Appropriations bill urges development of objective tests for cannabis impairment. But the science remains unsettled, with studies showing mixed results. For cannabis users, businesses, and regulators, Morrison's push could mark a turning point. Clearer standards and stronger awareness campaigns may reduce stigma, improve safety, and eventually align cannabis with alcohol in terms of regulation.
This was the State of Cannabis News Digest, available weekly. You can listen to us on all main podcast platforms. To make sure you don't miss out on the latest updates and in-depth analysis of the cannabis industry, be sure to subscribe to our podcast. By subscribing, you'll get notifications for each new episode, helping you stay informed and ahead in the ever-evolving cannabis market. Join us next Saturday for more insights. Until then, keep thriving, and stay green.